I call Jamie Greene to have followed Ruth McGuire, and Ruth McGuire will be the last speaker in the open debate. Mr Greene, please.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. I hope my colleagues across the chamber will excuse my croakiness. It's nothing to do with the fact this is the 12th debate we've had on the EU. It's just general man flu, so apologies. I'll struggle through. It is quite clear, however, that this debate has been called not because the Scottish Government has any real concerns over the impact of Brexit on the Scottish creative and tourism industries, but because instead of debating legislation and addressing the real issues that face our country today, the Scottish Parliament is being forced once again to play the big bad Brexit bad game. And given that my colleague Mr Arthur declined any intervention during his very elegant speech, I do wonder, though, if he has a view that a Scottish Leave voter is any different from an English Leave voter, or do they deserve a similar or different outcome to the vote that we had this year? I'd be very happy to give way if he wanted to clarify his position on that.
Mr Arthur. McGarry. It comes down very simply to democracy. A majority of people in Scotland voted to remain, as they did in my constituency. In England, they didn't.
Mr
Perhaps we have different
perhaps we have different ideas of what democracy is, because I think we voted as a United Kingdom and the result was overwhelmingly in the majority. So no, I won't. I'd like to make some progress. Thank you very much. I appreciate it's very clear in this debate and the number of debates we've had about Brexit recently that there is a lot of heated debate and winds are still very fresh. I actually am genuinely inspired by the enthusiasm shown by Mr Arthur in his speech. He's genuinely very angry as a Remainer that the rest of the country voted to leave. And I can see that that enthusiasm and anger is coming through in his speech. It was apparent. However, I think we need to be a little bit more optimistic about the future in Scotland. And I think it's about time that the language coming from this chamber was more optimistic about the future in Scotland. Now, look, much has been said by my colleagues on tourism. I really think there's nothing to suggest that tourism is going to be eternally dented by the UK choosing to leave a political union such as the European Union. I think just as we will always want to visit the continent, to climb the Eiffel Tower, to go on our holidays and lie on the beaches of southern Spain, our friends in Europe will still want to come here and see our beautiful highlands and islands. They'll still want to come and play golf. They'll still want to come and cycle around Millport and shop on the Royal Mile. In fact, the Scottish Tourism Alliance has pointed out that the current weaker pound is proving a huge incentive for Europeans to come to the UK and shop in numbers that we haven't seen in decades. I'd like to make some progress. Far from the doom and the gloom coming from the centre benches, the figures from UK inbound show that tourism has been performing extremely well since June. So it seems that, not surprisingly, people from around the globe are still keen to come and visit our country. So let's look at, no, I'd like to make some progress, please. So let's look at the government motion today, which states that to protect our cultural tourist sectors, there must be free movement of people. But, Presiding Officer, freedom to live and work permanently in a country is not the same thing as freedom to visit and enjoy a country. And I think that the SNP that doesn't understand that distinction, or they are deliberately fudging the lines. So let's talk about Aisha.
Secretary.
Throughout my opening speech, I made it clear our focus was particularly around freedom of movement to ensure that the tourism sector can be fully and properly staffed, with 17% of the tourism sector being staffed by EU nationals. That is a genuine real issue. Genuine real issue. Could you engage on that point, please?
Mr Greene.
You know what? The Minister makes a very important point. A chunk of that industry we are recruiting from overseas. I don't think anyone on this side of the chamber is in any doubt as to the importance of those people, or are we undermining the value of the work they deliver? Do I have the answers to what will happen in the future post-Brexit? No, I don't think any of us do. That's why we're having these debates. I cannot undermine the outcome of the negotiation until the negotiation has actually taken place. We should bear in mind that there are millions of Brits living in Europe itself, and they are equally as important in this discussion. And I think that is often forgot when we have these debates. Jackson said I would. Jackson Carlo said I would talk about the digital issues, and I think there's lots we could say on this. If I may continue on the digital single market, I think it is an area that's very close to my heart in a previous life before coming to this Parliament. So I would like to discuss it if we have a few moments. I think the idea that our creative industries are entirely dependent on this political membership of the EU is actually quite absurd. I think Scotland can influence the digital single market along with the UK because it is such a leading player in this industry. You only need to look at the EU's own scorecards that repeatedly put the UK at the top in terms of connectivity, skills and our internet economy. In fact, in the G20, our internet economy is the highest. So I think if the Scottish Government has very specific requirements around the digital single market, then they should work with the UK Government so that these can be included in the negotiation. And I absolutely welcome any comments from the Government that they will do that with the UK, who is the negotiating partner in this situation. But the digital single market is not all perfect either, and I think that's another speech for another day, and we're very happy to debate that and discuss that with the Scottish Government. There are many concerns about areas of the DSM which I don't think work for the UK. There's huge discussions around data protection, IP ownership, GDPR, geo-blocking free content that's paid for by UK licence payers and so on. So I don't think the grass is entirely always greener in the European side, and there are member states within that market who have concerns as well. So if we have time.
Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you.
I think those points are particularly well made. It's exactly what this debate should be about, to make sure that in terms of shaping the digital single market, either before the UK leaves or certainly even during, it's absolutely vital that we help shape that, because if we don't, it will be shaped for us, and it might not be in the way that either the creative industries in Scotland or the UK as a whole would like.
Mr.
Actually,
Greene.
I welcome that feedback, and I think you know, if the Scottish Government is willing to accept all ideas and input into that conversation, I'd be very happy to put those ideas forward, because those are ideas we should be taking alongside our colleagues at DCMS in those discussions and presenting a strong case for what works post-Brexit in the digital single market for us. So I think I was going to talk about some of the success stories that we see in the digital industry in Scotland. We've had that debate previously, and I'm sure I'll have lots of opportunity in the future. So I will instead conclude by saying that I think that we should work together to protect our creative, tourist and digital industries in Scotland. But I think that the way to do that is not to undermine or forget the importance of our current largest single trading market, and that is the UK, which is why I think our amendment is actually very important, because the UK is the single biggest trading market to Scotland. Thank you.
Thank you very much.